assumed that the
But Berg means
baby,
mountain in German, and it's a common enough name. There are lots of non-Jewish people with names like
and
that.
I assumed that he was Jewish because of that name.
No, what? Well, why didn't his family? His family wasn't touched by the war. It was totally new to him. So, uh, I he was a naive, right? He's this 15-year-old boy, and he has scarlet fever, and he's sick, and he gets off the tram, and he just happens to stumble into the apartment building of the woman who takes your fare, and she shows him a kindness, and it starts there, you know.
Jim, I have a question. So it started in 1936 and it's established that he's 15. So therefore he would have
No,
been.
no, no, no. It's
Oh,
not 36.
46, wasn't after the war.
I think it's 56 or
Oh,
58.
oh, okay. Never mind then.
Okay.
Otherwise
Yeah.
he would be like 70, but yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, it's like 10 years after the war.
Yeah.
Never let the facts get in the way of a good movie.
Correct.
So even if you're mistaken, you gotta get
No,
past
I'm completely mistaken.
Yeah. No problems. No
Okay.
worry. So this establishes his character right off the bat. He's got something he's hiding. He's withholding himself from anyone who's in front of him. And you'll see it's very different from the young man we meet soon after that. Now, after this overnight visitor leaves, he goes to the window and he sees a train. And then there's this, common cut in the movie where his point of view is with the young boy on the tram passing by. And then it goes back to him. So they use that technique in the film to do time changes and to connect him with his young self. It's okay. It's a little cornball, but there's so many other charms to the movie. I'm not quibbling with it. It works to help that weave between past and present. We don't quite know what the connection is. And that's another thing. This film is very rich with clues to the future point in the film in any given moment. And that's why he has to go through a flashback to discover, oh, that's why she couldn't read the menu. That's why I had to read to her. And then the light dawns on him that she never could read. But let's go back to that beginning. So he's distant, and that's what it tells us about him. There's something in his past, and then we toss to him on the tram. Toss is a television word that says scene changes, but it's introduced by the previous scene. And he looks at her on the tram, but he's sopping wet and he's feverish, and he goes to the alleyway in front of her apartment building, the entranceway, and he throws up, and she notices him and takes a bucket of water and cleans off his feet and sends him away. And he goes home where his family takes care of him. He has scarlet fever. And he's got to stay in bed for 3 months. So the mother says, oh, this woman who was nice to you, you should go back and thank her. So that's when he shows up with the flowers, and he walks in, goes up the stairs. Her door is open. Her door is always open for some reason. It's very much unlike her, but it's always open. Maybe she lives on the top floor and nobody goes there. Yeah, Brad.
Jim, can we talk about his family a little bit?
Sure.
Because they seemed cold, distant. We see the father reading a book.
Yeah.
We then learn that he didn't go to his own father's funeral. He seems to have lost contact with his family. I wonder, am I missing something? Were there some clues
I
in the
didn't pick up
movie?
I didn't pick up on the dad that much, other than how stern he was.
I mean, when you're a boy whose father lived through the war, a German
Yes.
father
Right.
who lived through the war, there have to be some issues there, I would think.
Well, this is a point of the whole film. It's issues with those who survived but weren't Jewish, the Nazi guilt. So we'll get back to that. But yes, I'm glad you pointed that out. So Germans who lived through the war, had blind hindsight. They chose to ignore what their parents did, or maybe his father was a Nazi. I don't know.
Do we
Marina?
know if the father was German? I kind of got the impression he was British. I mean, a lot of the German men of World War II were killed. I thought maybe he was like more like a stepfather or something.
I didn't pick that up. Was it his accent?
Well, he couldn't have been British. There was nothing about British at all in the movie.
Yeah.
They were all German living in Germany. My question was, Jim said this is a family not touched by the war. We cannot say that. We don't know whether they were
We
touched
don't
by the
know.
war or not. What we see is that they are very well off. For the Germany, just 10, 13 years
Yeah,
after the war, it's strange. So the father must, it's a 5-people family and they are very well off, and that's puzzling.
Well,
And the
don't
father is
understand
the father's a bit of an intellectual, it
Yeah.
seems, because he's got a book there at the table. So there isn't a lot of conversation going on amongst them. I mean, this was not it wasn't a very warm
No.
feeling that
It's
you
a
had
traditional
about this
family.
family.
There's a brother there who's totally silent. The girls are emotive because they're young and girls. And later on in the film, when he comes back late, Dad orders the wife, get him some dinner. You know, it's a traditional old school family. I didn't want to say German family because I'm sure there are many British families like that, where, you know, the dad was the patriarch and head of the table. But I think that's beside the point. It's all there, but I didn't pay attention to it. But I'm glad you brought it up because it makes you ask, if you think about it, well, what did his father do during the war 13 years ago? He was not a young man. He was 30, you know, maybe 40. So we don't know, you know, so we can't assume beyond that. Betty?
Yeah, well, first I want to say I thought it was a very powerful film, and I'm glad you selected this. But that said, I felt like a lot of things weren't really fleshed out, not just about his family, but also you know, the woman. Why did she have no family and no friends? We never find anything out. We just know she was alone before the war. She was alone after the war. Nobody visited her in the prison. So, you know, I would have liked to know more about both families, both his family
Okay.
and her family.
Okay. We don't know if she was like this before the war. We just don't know. She was illiterate before the war, and that's why she took her job at Siemens. And when they offered her some other job there, she couldn't do desk work, so she went and worked for the tram company. So we don't know about her or what her family did, but that's her trauma. That's what makes her shut off from the world, is what she did in the war. But we as viewers don't know that yet in the film. So yeah, she's a mysterious persona. She's stern and she scowls a lot, and she's, you know, she befriends the boy and walks him home, but she's still a sourpuss, you know, and certainly isn't thinking of him sexually. But when he shows up with flowers to thank her, she looks at him a little differently because he walks in the room and she's in a negligee and ironing her brassiere, and you know he's like struck with, I've never been alone with a vital woman like this, just my mother. And she catches him looking through the crack in the door at her legs, and you know it's a funny moment because she knows that he knows, and he knows that she knows, and he runs away. You know, it's almost comical, except that the performances are so good. But she is this also troubled person. You know, she shows no she shows no mercy with anybody. Yes, Susie, did you have a question? You're muted. You're muted. Lower left corner.
Okay, you can hear me now.
Yeah.
I think that for me, I love the mystery of not knowing anything. And I kept thinking about, why was she like this? Why is he like that? And it was fine for me that we didn't get a whole bunch of background about anyone, because it just at the end, I won't say what the end is, it just all pretty much came together.
Yeah, right.
Really well done, keeping us in a cloudy, but interested place. That was wonderful.
Okay, it was wonderful, and it's a real key in storytelling in movies.
It is.
It's called audience engagement.
That's
You
what I
have to-
was going to say.
Yeah,
Audience engagement.
You have to give them something to chew on while they're watching the film, or they might get bored and
And
look
I
at the
was
text on their
chewing.
phones. So you have to keep the audience glued to the screen and asking those questions. Betty, when did those questions come up for you? From the beginning? You wanted to know more about her?
Probably, yeah, I'm not sure. Probably all along. Even when he first went into her apartment, it was just her. There was never indication of anybody else in her life, and it seemed very it seemed very odd, and I just would have wanted to know more.
Okay, but you see that you wanted to know more even then. So the filmmakers kept you engaged by your desire to know more. They led you on. They said you teasing information that made you want to fill in the blanks. Yes?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that fair to say?
yeah.
This is what evil, conniving left-wing filmmakers do. They deceive their audience into liking something or staying with it. God forbid if anybody takes over the Kennedy Center. But back to our film. I'm glad somebody got that joke.
Oh,
I
God.
got it.
By the way, he did appoint an executive underneath him to run the show. But
And I heard they're allotting extra money now for the Kennedy Center more than before.
yeah, because they can program what they want.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah.
The person he
But-
appointed has no arts experience whatsoever.
Yeah. And the other thing is that
The MAGA
the
guy.
people, I believe in the cast there, have boycotted the program, the play they're in. Some actors, it's like, well, you're going to be reported to the thought police for doing this. And, but it took guts to say, no, I'm not going to appear because he's done this to the Kennedy Center. And I thought it was very courageous, but let's see what happens. They may show up on a list somewhere like the 1950s.
Yep.
Mm.
It's like very scary when stuff like this happens, but bravo to the actors. Okay, so he comes back with flowers, and what does she do? She acknowledges his kindness. What, Barbara?
He
Put him in the
gets
sink.
him.
Put him in the sink.
No. Oh,
She
okay.
said, put the flowers over there.
Right. And then she sends him where?
To
To
take
get
a bath.
coal for
Oh,
her
to get
water
coal,
heater.
yeah.
Yeah.
2
And
pails,
that's when he
2
comes
pails of
back
coal.
with coal dust on his face, and we know what that leads to. But she's still severe. She's not even pleased by the flowers. Put them over there. And again, Betty probably made you say, well, why is she such a bitch to him? He's just being sweet, but that's who she is. So you got to stay tuned to find out who she is.
She's just weird.
Yeah.
That was my feeling the whole movie, that she is just a very
Okay, you're onto
nice
something.
person.
Okay, today, when do we say somebody's weird? After World War II, we said they're shell-shocked, right? Now we say it's PTSD, right?
Okay.
Isn't she suffering from a form of PTSD?
Yeah.
I know. I think she was that way going in. I mean, she just said, "Give me a job. I'm a guard." She totally
No,
did.
but that didn't make her sullen after the war. It didn't make her withdrawn.
She
Maybe
was
her literacy.
missing, Jim, I think she was missing a piece forever. She wasn't just PTSD.
I don't think it was. Yeah, I
She
agree.
didn't have any sense going into it that she had any options other than to
Yes.
take a job as a guard. I mean, she was internally vacant.
I don't know, entirely vacant, but yes, she
I didn't
this
say
was her only
entirely,
path. was the-
internally.
It was the only path for her, being an illiterate person who needed work during the war and after the war.
It wasn't the only path. It was a path that paid better than some of the crappier jobs, and she
Okay.
felt very little about anything.
All right, so she was, I'll leave it with the,
She was just real driven.
well, I mean, she had to make a living. She realized that after the war, so she took this menial job where she could survive not reading or writing. You know, but just taking coins and punching tickets.
Yeah, but the
No.
job called for her to do certain things, and not just a menial job, and she had to earn a living.
As a guard.
She was as narrow-minded as you could
Well,
possibly
this
get.
was post-war, I'm saying.
Yeah, but
Post-war.
she was like that before when she took
Yeah.
a job as a guard. She
Yeah.
didn't struggle
Yes.
with it. She didn't have any complex moral thinking. She was a pretty
Yeah.
cool, internally cool person.
Well, we know from her testimony at the trial, which was obviously very sincere, what else was I to do? What would you do? You know, it was like, it was just a job for her, and she wasn't Jewish. So she could do that and live with impunity for a while until the war was over and she realized she'd aided and abetted these criminals and these horrible people, and she was part of their scheme. Jeff?
I think we have to remember that she was working for Siemens.
Yeah.
And Siemens was the company that made the gas, the Zyklon B. And the fact is, she did have a choice. In order to join the SS, it's totally voluntary. She volunteered to be that. You couldn't be in the SS. You couldn't be forced to be in the SS. It was a choice she made.
But wasn't she was given a choice while working at Siemens to work
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and yes, Siemens was guilty of war crimes. Absolutely, as was Kross, who equipped the jury. I think they made munitions for the Nazis.
But it was IG Farben that had the big factory at Auschwitz III.
Yeah.
So,
all right, but you know, it's like there were ordinary working class Germans before the war who didn't know anything about what was going on, who weren't political, who just wanted to put bread in their plates, you know.
You know, it didn't even occur to me when I was watching the movie when they offered her a promotion.
Yeah.
When she was on the trolley.
Yeah.
And it's like until now when we're together here, that she had to get another job.
Yeah, she was forced to.
She was forced to get another job. And like you said, I think I think a lot of people were very ignorant of the situation and didn't really know what they were getting into.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I think she signed up for it as far as I could tell. They said you're going to be a
think
guard.
that she wanted to
do whatever,
go work and kill people?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think so.
She did what she was told because it was a
Oh,
job.
really? There was not a Nazi left in Germany when the war was over. Everybody knew nothing. The smoke was coming out next door.
Of course,
Nobody knew
Fern.
anything.
How do we know that?
Jim,
I know that my mother sat there as a slave laborer in a farm near Dachau, and the people, you could smell it, you could see it, everybody knew about it, and when it was over, nobody knew diddly squat.
Yeah, they just didn't give a damn.
Okay, let's move
that's
on.
like
And
a
Natalie has raised her
lawsuit.
hand.
Yes,
We'll
I
come
think
back
we
to you.
should start with the title of this movie, the Reader. Now, we know at the end of the movie that she teaches herself to read. So we know that she was smart.
Smart enough. Yeah.
She was smart the way she did it, and she learned how to write. And that's what we start with. Now think about it. Who did not know how to read in Germany at that time? So that itself is proving that something horrible happened to her. As a child, we don't know any of this.
She could have come from an impoverished rural community where she wasn't taught to read.
The point
you can't assume that.
The point is that we know that there was something very strange about this woman, which happened to her as a child that she didn't know how to read.
We don't know what happened to her as a child. We do
not know. And we shouldn't know a lot of the things that went on in this movie. There's no way we could know.
Okay.
But the fact that she can't read starts with right away, you know, that something is terrible has happened to her.
No, but we don't know that she can't read until the trial.
Well,
you-
people know how to read.
No,
even-
you can't assume that, Natalie. You just can't.
Can I
Yeah,
jump in?
Let Brad talk, please.
Can I jump in here? Because
Yeah. Yes.
I know I'm the only Jew on this call who has a brother-in-law who was in Hitler Youth.
What?
Really?
And the reason he was in Hitler Youth, he was Austrian. He was from a family of pig farmers. He was one of 10 children, and the rest of them were all illiterate. The Hitler Youth organization saw potential in him. He was smart, and therefore he was chosen to be in this group. And, you know, the irony of all this is, to interject a little humor, he said after the war, they took all these boys and they put them in a Jesuit school. And he looks at you and he says, and that was worse.
Okay, that's a great story.
In terms of the discipline. But anyway, yeah, Natalie, there were many Germans at that time who were illiterate. So illiteracy
Okay,
was
good.
very,
But
very
the
common.
fact that she was, my point is that we don't need to talk any further about trying to figure her out. We'll never figure her out. We know that something terrible happened to her that brought her to this point where we see her when the movie opens up.
We
Okay.
just don't know
No,
that.
when the boy visits her to bring the flowers and she's ironing a bra, and he tells her, I've been really sick, I was in bed, and he said, I was so sick, I couldn't even read. And we saw a reaction on her face, but we, don't understand why that's such a big deal to her so much later.
Mhm. Thanks for pointing that out. I overlooked that. There are a lot of those reaction shots that were very telling, but I missed that one.
Who,
All right,
irons, who irons a bra?
well,
Yeah, who irons a bra?
Kate
We're
Winslet.
all from that era.
Well, I
Okay.
guess some people
Okay, Marina.
iron their boxers too.
okay, Marina has her hand raised.
I don't care whether the person who killed my relatives had a difficult childhood. And so this movie offends me deeply. I read the book, and I knew, as I was watching the movie, I knew what it was about. The movie is made beautifully, cinematographically, but it was a torture for me to watch it. And currently in Los Angeles, there was a play that discussed the photographs from the albums that showed how the employees in the concentration camp got their recreation, how the organization provided them with their vacations. And I understand that they needed this relief because they were dealing with vermin. They were exterminating the Jews, and it's very hard work. And so they needed to relax, to go to a spa, to have their celebrations. I just don't understand why I need to watch it. Why is there such a play? And I understand if the movie is about the boy who was abused by an older woman, because 15-year-old is not supposed to have a sexual relation with an older woman, who lived through, he's traumatized by that encounter. But the woman, I'm disgusted with her. I don't think she should be exonerated, and that's what
That's
the
not an issue
movie
here.
does about it.
Right, but let's go back to what you just said. Did she abuse him, or was she so starved for affection because she's been so shut away since her experience in the war that she needed it? She needed companionship.
She needed it, but she should have chosen an older man. She's abusing a boy. you are talking from the point of view of the woman who is older, and of course, a beautiful young boy is a nice toy, but she's doing harm to this boy. I understand that he may be interested in sexual exploration, but it's immoral.
I didn't
I
see
agree.
him. I didn't see him as abused because he got so much out of it. The thrill he got just reading to her.
Right, but we're just talking about him being shut up, shut down, not being able to have a meaningful relationship in his adult years, and
But
being.
he didn't have that problem until after this trial. You know,
We don't know. He got involved with the woman because of her, because he couldn't go and report her inability to write. He didn't have another relationship between.
He was young, but you can't tell me that a healthy 15-year-old boy, even in 1958, would not be attracted to this woman, especially his first time.
But the point is that
That's not the point.
he was not.
One at a time, please, Barbara.
He didn't get married, and I think that this.
He did get married.
He did get married.
Oh, yeah, he got married later in life.
Oh,
They had a kid.
oh, that's
But
right.
and then
He had a
divorced.
daughter.
Okay, one at a time. Brad, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I think Natalie, emphasized the title of a movie, The Reader, and the book that keeps coming up again and again is The Odyssey. And I think the reason why that's coming up is that's a story about marital or
You're frozen, Brad. Is it about marital strife or relationships?
No. Fidelity.
Fidelity.
Ulysses' fidelity to Penelope,
Yeah.
Penelope's fidelity to Ulysses. The truth of the matter was, despite her tragedy, the things that she did, he remains faithful to her throughout this entire movie.
Yeah, he's
despite
smitten.
all of that.
He is smitten, and he
So
doesn't
it's a
suspect that she was
story.
a Nazi. He's so naive.
It's a story of fidelity,
Okay.
despite all of those odds.
Okay. I think you're onto something, Brad, because the first time we cut to his school, the instructor is talking about the Odyssey. And he starts out by saying, the mark of contemporary civilization is keeping secrets. And she kept secrets in her past, and as an adult, he kept secrets in his past. So, and that reverberates every time they come back to the Odyssey. Thanks for bringing it up. It's not about that journey. It's about the secrets we keep from each other. Fern?
This is a tale, in part, a coming of age story of a boy told by a man.
Mm-hmm.
And if we were telling it in reverse, it might be clearer for us today that an older person with authority and knowledge and so on, who is having a sexual relationship with an innocent and young person, even when it's consensual, it's considered rape. And it's considered rape for a good reason, because young people like that, when somebody has that kind of authority, even if they think it's okay, it ultimately harms them in ways they have not the ability to understand when they're young. And you're defending the reverse because it's a traditional male coming of age story. And I have to say, I agree with Marina that that part of it is something that if we like it, it's because we're used to it.
Well, okay, I accept that, but in the front of the movie where he's reading in bed to her, you see her smiling, taking pleasure in it, weeping at sad stories. It's not like he's powerless.
It doesn't mean that she didn't like it. It doesn't mean it at all. It means that that young people are ill-equipped to understand the
Okay,
ramifications of
I'll
that.
buy that, and that harmed him going forward into life.
Yes, it
I can
did.
accept that. It's I still think that there's by placing all the blame on her for his silence and his closed offness in life is wrong. That's not what the movie's really about. He suffers a loss when she leaves him without an explanation. That's the trauma.
Yeah.
Not that he had the affair with her,
But that
but
was
that she,
going to happen because he was she was an older person with a little boy. What was any other?
I don't know. I
outcome
don't
be?
know. All I can
Gonna
accept.
marry him? I mean,
No, I think that's not the way to see it. Excuse me for saying that.
Where
But
did
we can only assume what's there in the film.
Where
That's
did
the
she
evidence.
go and why did she leave when she
The point is
left?
she had to get away from him because she was found out. And she didn't want him to find out that she was illiterate. So who knows? That's a big blank spot, until we see her at the trial.
She had to run away because she couldn't get a desk job. She was being promoted.
Yeah.
And we did get an inkling that she cannot read when she looked at the menu and
But
told
that's
him.
later. Yes.
No, it was not later. It was
right. Looking at the
before-
menus early, there's a little confusion there. The first time I saw it, I didn't read it that way.
I read it right away.
Yeah.
I did.
Okay.
I did too.
Mhm.
Read it right away.
Well, did
She
that ruin
said-
the movie? Did that
She
ruin the
said,
movie?
I'll have what he's having.
Okay.
Even before the menu, when they were reading in bed and he would show her the book, she would
Yes.
toss it away.
Okay, but did you know that the
Don't
first
show
time
it
you
to
saw
me
it?
because I can't read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask all of you, did that ruin the movie for you?
No,
Okay.
no,
So
it added to it.
rather than the surprise that she read to the prisoners, you see, this is Michael's point of view. It's the first time he even suspected that she was illiterate because in the trial it said she read to the prisoners.
She didn't read to the prisoners.
They read to
She
her.
had the prisoners read
Excuse
to
me.
her.
Excuse
They
me.
read to her.
It read to her.
Yeah. Jeffrey?
I think part of the issue here is sympathy in some way for her because she's illiterate. And I felt absolutely no sympathy for her whatsoever. I think in the beginning of the film, you see her fastidiousness, the fact that she needs order. And there is never a part in the film where she expresses any kind of regret for what she did
Right.
whatsoever.
Yeah, that's part of the damage.
And
to her psyche.
the illiteracy has nothing to do with people being burned in a barn and her not doing
No,
anything.
you're right. You're right.
about
But
And so I found her to be completely, and I do agree that she was abusing him as a child. I found nothing sympathetic about her whatsoever. So
okay, so there. Let's move on. Betty, one final comment and then we'll move
Yeah,
on.
well, just I agree, she was very seductive and I felt the movie tried to make her, I'm kind of agreeing with a lot of people to try to make her more sympathetic than I felt towards her. But that I mean certainly the fact that all the women placed the blame on her and so she was in the prison longer, I think that was certainly very very unfair. But so and I did admire that she taught herself to read, so I thought she had some good qualities. But overall I did not from the beginning I didn't find her a sympathetic character because she was seducing this young boy, and even if he was enjoying it, we saw the impact that had on his life. And also when she left, I'm not sure why she left, because it was right after they'd had an argument and he'd wanted to.
But the scene before it was the promotion, and she looked shocked there.
So she was illiterate. She couldn't.
Yeah. So the scene before and the argument were grounds for her leaving.
Yeah. Yeah, that there was this argument, and the argument was he wanted to be with friends, and there was a young girl who was his age who was interested, and
Yeah.
I didn't know how much that was a
No,
factor.
no, it wasn't. What split them up in that scene when in the argument was he said, "You never tell me what you feel. You don't open up to me, and I'm totally open to you." And that's why he was so wounded when she left without explaining anything. Yes, he may have been abused. It's okay if you believe that. But the point is, he really believed in the relationship. Yes, he was a young kid who fantasized about being with her for the rest of his life. I don't think he ever thought that far ahead because he was
Yeah.
only 15. So you could call it abuse, whatever. The point is, they had a relationship and each were bound in it for whatever reason. And when she felt threatened, and remember, it's not that she was so afraid of being uh, illiterate in the beginning when she refused to take the desk job at the tram company. It's that she didn't want to be embarrassed by her illiteracy. It was a shameful thing for her. And she'd been hiding out like she was covering up her secrets as being a Nazi guard. It's another secret that she carried with her. So, it's like, yes, I don't say you're wrong. She was abusive by today's standards. In those days, it was just, oh, he was an innocent boy and he saw an opportunity and he was so overwhelmed by it, he couldn't think that this was inappropriate. He said things like, I can't imagine being without you, and let's take a weekend together. And,
Yeah.
but the tell was when he pays the check at the lunch on the bike trip, she says, did you and your mother enjoy lunch?
Oh,
Very, very funny
I
moment.
knew that
Yeah.
was
And it's like, oh, okay. He plays along with it. Yes, she did, and he goes off without thinking about it in another way because they go swimming after that, I think. But uh, uh,
No,
Hanna,
he goes off and kisses her right in
yeah, right
front
away.
of the
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that was great.
I still think I love you. But over her shoulder, Hanna looks at the matron of the restaurant what had been watching them. And then it cuts back to her and she goes off on her bike. So she's aware of how other people will perceive the relationship.
Mm.
But I want to talk about Bruno Ganz, who's the law professor, who it turns out, I think, was a survivor himself. There's a reference to it at the end where he say, well, if people like you can't learn from people like me, what's the point? A very telling line. But I want to go back to his point about the law, and you lawyers should jump on this. There's morality and there's legality, and they are not the same things. And that the law is narrow to protect us from overreach. Uh, Fern, do you agree that that was his mission to the students? Yet even he said,
Well, I don't think it was his mission. I think that he explained that is so. I don't think he liked it. And I think
no,
that
it's not
people,
about liking it. It's about this is the law, and this is how we agree to live, what we agree to live by.
but that wasn't the law that was followed, for example, but in the Nuremberg trials and the trials that they were having of these people, there was definitely a sense of a higher law that, and
Yeah,
yes.
a violation of humanity.
No, and
Okay.
in Germany, that was an international court. In
Yes.
Germany, the law was essentially for decades after the war that you had to prove that the individual was personally responsible
Right.
for
And
killing
intent.
of a prisoner. It was only later, when most of these guys were already old and dead, they expanded the law to basically say that anyone who was an accomplice could be prosecuted. You didn't have to prove that they were the ones who actually committed the crime of murder. You could file charges based on the fact that they were guards in the camps and were therefore accomplices.
Yeah.
At that time, you had to prove that they were personally responsible.
And when did that change, Jeff?
It changed with the Demjanjuk. I mean, it was
Demjanjuk, yeah. I remember that.
It was in the 2000s
Yeah.
sometime that they changed it.
They brought an 80-year-old guard to trial
Yeah,
for
and now-
crimes against humanity, and he was convicted, but I don't know what happened to him.
I think he died.
He died in
before.
prison or not. He was
Before.
He
very
died
sick.
before he went to prison.
Yeah.
He died before it was
The accountant-
dragging and dragging that trial.
Yeah.
He died at home. He
Yeah.
didn't go to prison.
Okay, but let's go back to the Bruno Ganz scenes where he's the wise sage about the law and morality. After the trial, when Michael's so stricken that, oh, it's her, and they're convicting her of a worse crime because she couldn't admit she was illiterate, he comes to the professor and he says, I know something about the trial that would influence its outcome. And he said, well, you have to bring it forward, for to be just. The justices have to know. But then Michael says, oh, but that would influence the trial. And then I think Ganz delivers this amazing line. He says, and he said, I couldn't do that. I couldn't step forward and do that. I'd be ashamed or something. I wish
No,
I
I think he says that she doesn't want it to be known that she was
No, that's not what he
illiterate.
said. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what I
Yeah.
remember.
Okay. But the
that's
line
why-
I'm
that's the secret that he didn't divulge to the court. She couldn't have written the arrest report, or
Right, right.
not the incident report.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
post-fire
But he
report.
didn't admit that to the professor either.
Yeah,
the
and
professor's
she took
reaction-
responsibility for it for
Yeah.
some reason, which I don't necessarily understand. But she was honest about everything else. Yes,
Yeah.
I was there. Yes, I did this. Yes, I
Yeah,
did
right.
that.
Well, to
But
her,
why
in a way,
said
she was
wrote the
naive.
report doesn't
She
make
didn't know
sense.
the law. She had nobody advising her.
Well,
but-
yeah, he had a lawyer. She had a lawyer.
Yeah, but,
it was not.
He was not effective.
Well, he didn't know that she was illiterate.
No, he didn't
apparently.
either. He didn't know that.
Yeah, had he known that,
He might have stepped in. Yeah.
he could have proven that she couldn't have written the arrest
Yeah.
report.
Okay, but I want to go back to this conversation when Michael admits to the professor, I know something, and but I'm going to be ashamed to admit it for some reason. And Bruno Ganz says to him, I don't care how you feel. Your feelings are extremely unimportant. What matters is what you do. And that goes back to what many people have said. I don't care how you felt about the war of the Nazis. By not stepping up, you were saying your feelings were important enough to ignore these people being gassed and killed. It gives, see, saying what the professor is saying is you don't have the freedom to excuse your actions if you knew about them. And she did know about them. Why didn't she have the moral sense to say, I have to let them free? Why did you have to adhere to the strict law, the strict sense of obligation as a dutiful employee to keep them in there because there'd be chaos if you let them go? Well, there's chaos inside by keeping them in. It's like it's not well dealt with in the movie. I don't know if it was well dealt with in the book. Fern?
I think it was that part was an indictment of the German people.
Yes, it was very much.
It was intended to indicate that she simply didn't even consider that they had such an odd way of thinking, and Jews were so demeaned and dehumanized. It didn't even occur that she should
Expendable. They were expendable.
They were expendable.
Right.
They were vermin. They were and the idea that one should act contrary to one's orders, to one's job, was kind of the classic definition of what a whole bunch of what the German people were like. Everybody, well, they told me to do it. So what was I supposed
Well, and that's how this country felt about Black people, until the 60s. And even then, it still persists today, that they're lesser than us, so we can abuse them and deny them rights. Susie.
When she said to the lawyer, to the judge or one of the judges, when she said, well, what would you do?
Yeah.
Because she said, I was protecting these people. If I would have opened the door, they would have been shot. So I was
No,
doing
she
my
didn't say there would
job,
have been.
and
I
I
don't
No, there
think
would
so,
have been
but
chaos.
There would have been
Yeah.
chaos
Yes. It would have
because
been,
they would have scrambled for
Oh,
freedom.
I thought that they would
No.
have been shot
No.
dead. right
She
next.
wasn't
said they
protecting
would
them
have
from the
stayed.
Nazi guard, other Nazi guards. She was protecting them from, I don't know what chaos means in this case, from themselves.
Susie is thinking about another book that we read in a book club where there was also a fire and the Jews were in the church, and as they were jumping out of the windows, they were being shot. It was not in this book, it was in a different one, but this episode repeats itself in different
Yeah.
iterations.
Yeah. Well, it's about moral, it's slicing the onion of moral responsibility. It may have been the law because in Germany you were allowed to shoot Jews.
So you don't think that she was thinking she was giving them the best she could by keeping them inside?
Oh,
No, she conflated it with the notion of chaos and disorder.
Yeah, that it was better to keep them inside than to expose the outside to the chaos that would ensue. It doesn't do a very good job of explaining that.
She said we were the
three-
guards,
three-
we were
three
supposed to
people-
guard them. If we opened the doors, they would have
Oh,
run
okay.
away. It would have been chaos.
Yes.
So
Let's-
she was not protecting them. She was doing her job
Yes.
without thinking about the people inside.
That's right. Arlene has something to say.
No, I just was saying that there were 300 people inside. So if she opened the doors, they would all leave and probably trample them, but that would have been good.
Did we read this book in the book group, Susie and Marina? Yeah, I thought so.
The Schlenkel book.
Can I
Yeah.
Maria, yeah.
jump in for a minute? I mean, I'd like to focus more on him and less on her. Given, let's accept worst case, she's a monster. Nevertheless, he has this enduring connection with her, despite what she's done. And is that love? Is that a statement about what true love is? That I'm going to love you no matter what you do? Is that the message here? If we focus on him, accepting the fact that if you accept the fact that she's a monster,
Well,
how do we come to terms with his continual involvement with her?
The answer is he loved a monster. He's conflicted. He has two different, he loves her, but he's repulsed by what she did. And I don't know. I think the movie lets us down by not having him speak up at the trial or explain why he didn't.
But I think it's clear why he didn't. He was respecting her wishes.
But I think there's a key scene where she puts her hand or something on his
in the prison.
In prison, and he withdraws it.
Yep.
Right.
I mean, he feels some kind of responsibility for her, but it's not love at that point. In fact, and I think that came after the statement that she makes, something like the past is the past, and we can't, there's nothing we can do for the dead, which would have been her opportunity at that point to express some kind of regret for what she did, but she doesn't. She just says the past is the past.
Well, she says that to him, not at the trial.
Right.
And he went to see her. He went to see her before the verdict, and he left. He did not come to see her.
He couldn't face her. He couldn't face her.
I don't think it was love. I think it was.
He went to see her.
Please let Marina finish. What was it?
I think his reading and sending her books was an act of compassion for the downtrodden, but not an act of love. I don't think he continued loving her because he didn't go through to seeing her in the prison before the verdict, and because he didn't want to have anything to do with her after she was being released.
Okay. My answer to that is, not that there's a right or wrong answer, is that it was an expression of love and also disgust at the same time. He was conflicted. What do you do in a conflict? The psychologists among us, Jeffrey, you leave the field. It's approach avoidance conflict. And if you can't deal with one side or the other, you pretend it doesn't exist, or you sadly walk away from the prison because you can't face her. So I totally understand that. Susie?
It's like a love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
He probably couldn't believe, well, I don't think that he ever even got to understand why he was so deeply, deeply in love with her. But he set her up for when she came out, when she got when he got that telephone call from the warden or whoever it was that she got to come out of prison. He got her a place to live, and that's when he started sending her all the books. And
No, he sent her
the tapes in prison.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when he went to get her, he came with flowers
again.
the same way that he came as a youth.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. It's not, I don't think it was love. I think it was sort of, as Marina said, there were elements of compassion. She had an element of compassion within her, despite all of the evil side of her.
Yeah.
She came to him when he was sick and throwing up in the street, and she
Yeah.
did help him, and that he never forgot that. And the fact that he continued to transcribe or read actually hundreds of books to her in like a weird way. I think that was there was an element of humanity within her that he was willing to try to cultivate.
Okay.
Right.
We're splitting hairs here, because
but that's not love.
I'm sorry, his love allowed him to see her in a humane way. It wasn't, oh, I don't love her, but I'll send her books to absolve myself of loving her. No, it's like this was part of his conflict. He could do this much for her, but no more.
I think
his hand on top of hers in the prison canteen, she's pleased by it, and then he withdraws it. And the reaction from her is, uh-oh, he's not going to help me out. She feels the withdrawal of his.
Yeah, well, to me, it's not love.
I think like, the word is care.
Yeah.
There's something between nothing and love. And it's just
he can never erase what she did for him, to him, what the memory is, and he can't reconcile what she did to the Jews in the church. They cannot coexist in his mind, right? They coexist in reality, so what can you say? It's a failure of imagination, like somebody who thinks, the country's falling apart and they should support a certain president and his followers because they can't hold the other concept in their mind that maybe somebody's doing something wrong. The mind doesn't like chaos. The mind does not like confusion or contradiction. We long for resolution. And in this case, we cannot give it. Yes, she killed Jews. And yes, he loved her. And he could never, the beauty of the ending of the movie, I hate to jump to it now, although maybe we should, is that his resolution of his conflict is to take his daughter to her grave, which he paid for, and begin to explain the backstory. It's his expiation. In other words, he's teaching his daughter what Bruno Ganz, the law professor, said, people like you should learn from people like me. So he's hoping his daughter will learn from his experience about the complications of this situation, our obligations as moral and legal people. It's touching in a way. It's too sweet an ending, but I don't know how you could have ended it I wouldn't want to see an ending that wasn't emotional like that.
Tim, when you started, you mentioned that there was a lot of ambiguity. I think the ambiguity was built into this, so that everybody could make up their own mind to come to their own conclusions about Michael, about her, etc. The other points that I picked up was she spent her life making sure no one knew that she
Right.
was.
The secrets that she kept. Yeah.
And I think for Michael, the big thing was he said, I could have saved her.
Yeah.
Because the other women got 4 years,
Yeah.
she got life.
Uh-huh.
And so it was basically placed on her to have written this whole thing up when Michael knew, and by then I think,
Well,
we were beginning to know that she couldn't have because she wasn't able to put this
I mean,
down on paper.
in a way, this is one of the things that drew me to the film. Michael is processing his own guilt for not speaking up at the trial. And he still, he makes up by taking his daughter like he did when she was a young child. Oh, you like surprises? I'm not going to tell you where we're going. And he smiles at her lovingly.
But
Brad,
the other interesting thing I found was that at the end when she hangs herself,
yeah,
books are involved.
yeah, right.
And she dies, and then she gives money to the daughter of
No, she.
survivors. So puts a
No, the will says he should do with it whatever he sees fit, I think.
No. Didn't he
No.
say to give it
No.
to
No.
the woman who
Say he-
survived? And it was never clear how that one woman survived that burning building, but somehow that one
the
woman,
daughter was with her. She was in a camp as well.
yeah, I don't know how they survived because it wasn't made clear, but she said in the will to leave the money to the daughter who was still living.
Okay.
Yes.
Brad?
Yeah, that final scene, we're back at that church. And that was the church where they stopped on that bicycle ride.
Right.
She went inside and had a lot of angst. And you remember, as she was sitting there, we saw all the expressions on her face. And it's only with a backlight, with the Jews having been incinerated in a church with the doors closed, that
I see.
we have a better understanding of why she is so troubled when she's in
Okay.
that church.
I didn't think of it that way, but I'm glad you brought it up because I could see it. It's church to church, but I saw it a different way. I saw her weeping at the beauty of the experience. She had not allowed herself to experience such beauty. She'd shut herself off from the world and anything, I don't want to say aesthetic, but anything emotionally moving, which that, the children's choir was. And she keeps looking back to him and back to the choir, and there's torment on her face. And ultimately, I think somewhere towards the end of that sequence, it's clear that she's overwhelmed with this experience of beauty. And it's the loss, it's the self-inflicted loss of her life. So I found that very touching. Did I see a hand somewhere?
Yes. I was thinking about the fact that she used the word chaos.
Yeah.
For not opening the doors to let the people out of the burning church. And I'm wondering, did she mean that if she opened the doors and let them out, that the other guards would have killed her? Or
No, I don't think so.
No, I think she explains, no, it wasn't, I didn't fear, or a judge suggests that, were you afraid that you'd lose your job or something? It wasn't very clearly explained what chaos meant.
yeah, but that could have been in her
It
mind.
could have been, but
She wouldn't dare, but I thought about that when she was explaining about the fire. I'm thinking, why didn't you open the doors?
I think the judge asked her that, and
Yeah.
she said, no, that wasn't it.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean,
I would like to just say one thing with the chaos. I think that the Germans were very methodical. They wanted everything very orderly. Everything was very, very orderly. If people were going to be shot, they were shot in a certain way. It was clean. It was neat. And I think that was also the kind of chaos and having, oh my God, all the Jews running around screaming and yelling. That went against the whole German philosophy of let's do this in a very nice, organized way.
Orderly way. Yeah, they kept great records.
Dig your grave, and then you'll fall into it nicely. And everything was methodical. We had pictures of everything to show you. And chaos was what they did not want.
But
So
you know, some of those
that's what I had to
soldiers
say
who
about that.
wait, some of those soldiers who we don't know would have shot the people fleeing the church. We don't know that. But if they were there, some of them would have been doing it because it was a job. You know, not because they like order.
But the whole issue,
Wait, but let Betty speak.
yeah, the whole issue too, of which we heard a lot after the war, of following orders, people saying, well, I was just following orders. There was a psychological experiment that was done around that time, that I remember studying in college.
Zimbardo, prisoners and guards.
Well, there was that one, but I was thinking there was another one where maybe we're talking about the same one. I don't remember the details of it, but where the person was told to, if they didn't give the right answer, they would get an electric shock.
That was the Stanford
Stanley Milgram
psychology for Lombardo.
Yeah.
What
So
was
they
that?
turned,
It was the Stanford
Stanley
experiment.
Milgram.
Yeah.
That was in the 70s.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a very disturbing experiment because they use that, all of these people just went along with it, no matter how much the person was screaming. The person said, it's okay, just keep doing it. And they just kept doing it. And, it was a very disturbing experiment. And they did it because of this whole idea of following all the people who said they were following orders.
Right.
And so it reminded me of that when
Good point.
when she said that, she said, well, I was just doing, I was doing my job, I was doing what I had to do, and there would have been chaos.
Yeah, what would you have done? And it stops the judge, doesn't it? What would you have done?
Yeah, he never answered.
Right. Susie?
Why didn't he answer when she said, what would you have done?
Because he
Because judges don't do that.
They don't do
get-
that.
They don't
Even in
get
a situ-
interrogated.
I
He
think his
wasn't on
reaction-
trial.
his reaction was telling enough. She stopped him in his tracks because he realized, what would I have done? But he couldn't
Right.
comment. He couldn't
Right.
comment. It's not that it begs an answer.
And then my second comment is,
It stops the conversation because it's a moral challenge to him. Yeah, no.
why do you have to know how to read and write to stand up and defend yourself?
Right, you don't.
Bothered me.
You can do that
couldn't
anyway. I
Call
think
those women bitches and say, shut up, you're lying. You were just as involved as I was. That's a part of her that was very weird. She did yell at him in that one argument they had. She yelled at him like hell. And here's a chance to save her life, of which she probably didn't think was very worth
well,
saying.
maybe we can't tell. We don't know why she didn't speak up and say, because I couldn't read and write. We don't know if it was shame or because
we do know
That was the point.
we do
Was
know
that
it
an
was-
excuse?
one at a time, please. Chuck, what were we saying?
That was the point at which they gave her the pencil and paper.
Yeah.
And then it would have become obvious. She would have had to say, I can't, which
Yeah. So why
throughout
didn't
Difference does it
Why do you
make?
think she
She
didn't?
had a voice.
Why do you think she didn't? She
She
knew
could
it
have
might have
told her
saved her.
story.
because to her that had been from probably childhood, her secret.
So the shame was stronger than her sense of causing the deaths of 300 people.
Apparently.
Or
Say that again?
taking the responsibility for what happened.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
taking-
what the young protagonist told his law school professor, is that she was ashamed. That's why that's what they were talking about. She was too ashamed to admit she couldn't read or write.
Yeah.
That was a bizarre choice she made.
And maybe
That
she
was the
felt she
truth.
should pay for her guilt. That even though she didn't write the report, she should pay with her own life or imprisonment. Whereas the other women were trying to get off as easily as they could.
Yeah, they
She never
scapegoated
felt
her and
guilty.
she went along with it.
Yes, for
So
your guilt.
Where's the guilt? She didn't feel guilty.
Well, we don't. Again, the movie fails us, and it doesn't tell us why she didn't speak up. We don't know.
Yeah,
we do
the
know that she didn't
implication
feel
is she'd
guilty.
rather not be known as someone who couldn't read or write.
Well, is that enough? I don't know. I don't.
Well, that's what they imply.
Well,
I mean, is that enough for most
Well,
people?
here's
Probably
the thing.
not.
When you come to a question mark on a movie and you face it, you have to look at it from both sides and say, I don't know. Maybe it's the movie's fault and not me for not understanding deeper. It deserved an explanation.
Yeah.
And I
Although-
hold the movie accountable for it.
Also near the end of the
No.
movie, though, as
We'll come back to you,
finds as the grown-up asks her near the end of the movie, what have you learned? Have you come
Yes.
to look back upon the
Right.
situation?
Yeah.
And she basically said no. I mean, what she said is,
Yes.
I'm not even going to think about it. They're dead.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Now,
Period.
I'm glad you brought that scene up because I noticed it this time. He's kind of harsh with her when he interrogates her. What have you learned? And she doesn't understand the question. He says, no, I mean about the past, about what you did, and he's a harsh inquisitor there.
Yeah, and like she shrugs her shoulders and says, they're gone already. Why?
Well, I think that's when she said, it won't bring the dead back. I'm not sure when that came up.
The dead
Brad,
are
did you have a
dead.
comment? Wait, Arlene, what did you want to say?
No, I said that she said the dead are dead,
In that
But
scene.
I have a few thoughts too. They brought those 300 prisoners into that church in an orderly fashion. It might not have been so orderly, but they could have tried to bring them out if they were able to bring them in.
Yeah, I think we all understand that.
Yeah.
they
It was a
let
choice.
them die. Okay.
And also that Michael, I think he was so ashamed too, because he should maybe he didn't realize at first that she would get life over the other people, but once he understood that, he could have then spoke to the judge and say, hey, wait, she's illiterate and she can't read. So
Yeah.
he did he was ashamed, and he did a bad.
Well, he was ashamed of himself for loving her.
That's what I mean. He was
Yeah.
ashamed of himself, but he should have spoke up at that time. I think he carried that shame with him.
Yes.
That he didn't speak up.
Yeah.
And when he should have. And even his professor told him he should have.
Right. It's like the theme is secrets. You have to bare your soul in order to be moral and to move forward. Hiding stuff is not moral. Brad?
Jim, I thought what made this a really good movie was the fact that we weren't spoon-fed, that we weren't given all the answers, that it look at this fabulous discussion that we've had.
Yeah.
As a
This is
result,
something that in a long time.
that's what a good movie does.
Right.
So I
We all watched
appreciate
it with pleasure at the movie-going experience. Forget about what we thought of the people. We all felt it was a well-groomed and well-thought-through movie, except for a couple places. Chuck?
Yeah, getting back to, well, first of all, there's, again, what you just pointed out, Brad, is the ambiguity, which I think makes the film in a certain way. But the other thing is that Michael was not just an average citizen. He was a lawyer, he was a law student, he was a lawyer, and he was also a judge. At one point, they showed him coming down a staircase with, I forget what they call him, not an assistant, whatever.
No, he
He was
wasn't a
running
judge.
up the staircase to plead a case.
No, he was just a defense lawyer. He was.
Yeah, that's what they said. You know how she is if you're late. It was after his morning with the strange woman in his apartment. Okay, so Brad, thanks for bringing that up. I think this was a great discussion, one of the best we've ever had, because we all had a different point of view, yet we all were spellbound by the movie. That's a good film.
I have one more comment.
Yeah, Barbara.
Then I was thinking how sad it is that a person that wasn't able to learn to read and write or didn't have the ability when they were a child would be so ashamed of it. They couldn't help it.
The rest of the world could read and write once she came to the city. It's like
Right.
you see plenty. She felt this handicap most of her adult life. I don't know if she felt it before, but she couldn't forgive herself.
She couldn't forgive herself, but it wasn't her fault.
But people who feel bad about themselves don't necessarily think that far. They don't think about the causes enough. Maybe Chuck can chime in on this.
Yeah, you're saying it correctly. You're talking about reality perception.
Yeah.
In reality, I guess people shouldn't feel a certain way because of a handicap.
But they do.
That's not most people's.
Right. The world makes you feel handicapped. My wife is a stroke survivor. And I listen to her in her stroke support groups, and they talk about how nobody understands us the way we do. They all talk down to us like we're idiots because we're in a wheelchair or we use a cane. You know, it's otherizing people by not seeing them as a whole person. That's the crime against humanity that we commit on an everyday basis. It's built into any modern society.
Right, but I just wanted to just.
No, I'm glad you did.
To say that because. And then I guess Michael was ashamed of the fact that he fell into this relationship when he was only 15.
Well, he felt betrayed too. I loved her. Had I known that, maybe I wouldn't have gone that far with her, but she couldn't tell me. So there's an element of betrayal. You know, when you hide too much, you betray the ones you love, or prevent love from real love from happening. You know, because of secrets. Who had their hand up the longest? Betty, you just spoke. Let's go Susie and then Brad.
Can I make a suggestion for the next movie or one of the next movies?
Sure.
Yes, only because I personally was so moved by it and would like to hear everybody else's discussion, and that's The Adolescent.
Well, I saw that. That's a wonderful series, just remarkable filmmaking. All the editing is done in the camera. The camera's a character watching the characters react. It's about a 13-year-old boy who kills somebody, but we don't know that until later. At the end of episode 1, we learn it. It's on Netflix.
It's just the way it's made, and it's so thought-provoking, and it brings into so many values.
It's believe me, I love that film. I've taught it in my class, you know, but it's 4 parts, and each is so succinct and with its own story. I don't know that we can do it. I don't want to spend 4 sessions on it, but I can't. Can I ask you people to see 4 hours of film? No. In 4, yeah. So, but I'm glad you brought it up. See Adolescence on Netflix. It's really worth seeing. Jeffrey Ellison, you teach kids this age. You know, I think I'd love to hear from you privately, your feedback on the boy, the family. They're British. They're not Jewish, but
what's going on in the schools?
Yeah. Brad?
Yeah, I want to end on a positive note and share with you, you know, many of you know I had a bone marrow transplant 7 months ago. Do you know where 40% of donors come from? Germany.
Wow.
Is that expiation of guilt?
12 million Germans are registered as potential donors.
Wow. And that's a particular
12 million. They start in high school.
Wow. And that is a particularly painful donation. It's not like
no. What you're giving, first of all, they're just registering in high school. And a bone marrow transplant, it's a bit of a misnomer. Years ago, they would actually transplant the bone marrow.
Yeah.
Today, what they're transplanting are stem cells.
I see. That have been cultivated in a lab.
No, a donor goes in at one arm, they're taking blood, filtering out the stem cells.
I see.
And in the other arm, they're transfusing that same blood back into the donor.
Wow.
But
That's
it's
incredible.
12 million Germans have
signed up to do it.
To be on that registry. And when I went to a reunion last Friday at the City of Hope, One of the donors was brought, they had 2 donors and 2 recipients. Both donors came from German sources.
Wow.
Mm.
It's amazing. And I'm glad you brought that up. I just want to ask, are you genotyped to make sure it's a good fit? Because not everybody can take anybody else's blood.
Oh,
sample.
yeah. There's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
kinds
yeah.
of
Okay.
testing. No,
Okay.
but I just thought after this movie about Germany and it being such a downer, we
Well-
can have something positive to
Well,
say about Germany.
I've been to Berlin, and if you look at the Holocaust Memorial that Eisenstadt, the American architect, built, you will realize that any culture that could allow that to exist is really serious about making amends. So yes, and thank you for mentioning, this was a great discussion. I thank you all. Nobody's wrong and everybody brings something to it. And, you know, your comments bring other things out of the rest of us. So I encourage you to keep doing that. Now, going forward, we can have another session in 2 weeks if my wife will allow it. And I was thinking of doing The Hours, which is this sort of Virginia Woolf story of her suicide and its fallout on other people in contemporary society. Incredible cast: Meryl Streep, Nicole Kidman, Julianne Moore, Ed Harris, and it's very complex in terms of people's motivation. Do you think you have an appetite for it? So it's 2 time periods, 4 different people, 4 couples. Do you have an appetite for it?
Yep.
It's very, you know, who's read the book, The Hours? Okay.
I saw the movie.
And you saw it.
Didn't like it.
It's
Yeah,
very,
I also saw the movie.
Very
I may
complex.
not be available in 2 weeks, but
Okay.
it doesn't matter.
so if 5 people here say it's worth a discussion, I will program it. There's so much other stuff that's coming down the pike. Several films that I wanted to show have finally hit Netflix and Amazon Prime. And I don't want to tell you what they are because maybe you'll see them. You can. I'm Still Here, about a Brazilian woman who holds her family together when
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
disappeared by the autocratic dictatorship there.
Wonderful movie.
It
Yeah,
won the Oscar for
Yes,
Best
ma'am.
Foreign Film. Well deserved.
It did.
No, it didn't. No,
It didn't?
it won the Golden Globes for Best Actress.
It got
It didn't
the
win.
No, not
Oscar
the
as
Oscar.
the
It
No.
won. I'm pretty sure it won the Oscar.
It did
Yeah.
for best foreign film.
Yeah, for Best
best
Foreign
foreign film. Yes.
It was actually nominated for Best Film, but
Right.
it got the Oscar for Best
Foreign
Film.
film.
It's a wonderful film, and you know, at first I thought it's a sweet film about family and dedication, like
Oh,
a
brilliant.
weeper from Lifetime. No, it's about how do you make your life meaningful.
It's great.
Is it on Netflix or Amazon now?
It's on Amazon Prime. It's called I'm Still Here.
Yeah,
Very
I'd like
moving.
to see that.
And you know, he's made other films that are similarly genuine. Very few are available. I watched one that I don't want to discuss, but his name is Walter Salles, Salles.
I think that I'm Still Here is a richer conversation and less.
In The Hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd
I do
like to
too.
see that too.
Yeah. All right. Maybe we'll do that next. I'd like to. The Hours is too much like this, but interestingly, it's the same director writer team, and they do wonderful work, like, you know,
Yeah.
Ivory and Merchant, but not that Merchant wrote them, but we'll save that for another time. We'll do The Hours. And if you want to have a good time, somebody last session recommended The Penguin Story.
Oh, delightful.
Really
Yeah,
it's such
that
a
was
sweet
great.
movie about a man. That's also Argentina or Chile, you know, South America, where this professor adopts a wounded penguin, and it's very funny and very sweet. And then another sweet story about an animal is The Friend, about a woman who has to
Mhm.
Yeah, the big,
falls in love with a Great
the big,
Dane.
huge.
Yeah,
Excuse
and
me, are those streaming? Are those streaming? The
yes,
Penguin?
they're both
and-
streaming. Yes,
Oh,
yes.
the Penguin is-
How do you
Okay.
correct a
And the
penguin?
penguin
The Friend.
apparently is semi-autobiographical, not wholly, but parts of it apparently are. So that was surprising.
Yeah.
to me.
But both are charming animal stories that are about people.
The
How do
friend,
you
they're
direct a
charging.
penguin?
What?
They're
How to
charging
direct a
$10.
penguin.
They had several. I know this because I heard somebody speak about it. They had several different penguins. They tend to look alike,
Only
Yeah.
2.
and
I looked it
they
up.
get fatigued, and so they had to trade them off in different takes or different camera setups.
But you lure them with food or treats or
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, those
If-
penguins
if you Google
that
it-
penguin was amazing.
If
Well,
you
birds
Google,
birds can be affectionate, so that's something to watch on your own. I don't think they're worth bringing all of us together to discuss because they're so self-explanatory and just a delight to watch. You don't have to think about it. You just let it wash over you and love it. You know,
Yeah.
that's what movies are for anyway.
What's it on?
if you
What?
Google it, they will tell you all about how they trained the penguins,
Oh,
the 2
yeah?
penguins
Oh,
to
cool.
do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
there's a-
there are many other films coming up, but those are 2 will keep you busy until the next. I think it's 2 weeks from tonight on the 22nd, and yeah, I think I can do that. I think that's where we booked it. We're getting into the summer months, by the way, and you know, synagogues tend to shut down, like there's no need for community support or connection during the summer. You can convince a synagogue to get active in the summer. But if you guys want to continue through the summer, we can certainly meet at least once a month.
Right.
There's plenty of films to see. Okay, so you have your homework. It'll be I'm Not Here. And invite your friends, relatives, your children to see it. The children are a big part of the story.
Yeah.
And even your adult children, for those who have adult children, or grandchildren for that matter. It's very moving. It's it's I guess you could say it's G-rated. People come back from torture and they're wrecked, but you don't see the torture. So, but it's intentionally emotional that way, and you feel her losses and what she does to keep her family together. But it's beyond that. It's like this is why families make a life meaningful. Excuse me if nobody has a family here, but it's one justification for having a family that you can keep them together when your spouse is abducted by an awful government. Hopefully it won't happen here. Okay, thanks a lot
Wait,
for
did you
tonight.
say it was I'm not here or I'm still
I'm still here.
Okay.
She's still there after all the grief. And you'll love the ending because I'll ruin it for you.
Don't.
It's not, it's like they get together and the woman's mother appears as an Alzheimer's victim. And the mother of the mother in the film is the actress's mother.
Oh, yeah. Great.
It's so sweet. And she has Alzheimer's.
I
So-
just saw Central Station at the Academy with the mother, who also won the Oscar for Best Actress.
And was that Peter Dinklage? Central State? No, that was
No,
Sanders.
no, it's the same director,
Yeah,
Walter Salas.
Yeah, I wanted to see it, but I couldn't find it online. So
No, I saw it at the Academy of
yeah,
Motion
great.
Pictures. Oh, it was wonderful.
Yeah, he's a very sensitive guy, very clever, really understands where the audience is at every moment and keeps them going forward. So I recommend that. Okay, have to run. Thanks for tonight. Great discussion. Remember this. Remember how much we all got out of hearing each other's mistaken points of view. And see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Susie.
Hi, Susie.
Bye, Judy.
I want this turn off. Oh.